tribulations, my heart, my balls, my somebody stop, somebody come and get me. Little did I know that the Lord was riding with me. The dark, the light, my heart, the fight, the wrong, the right is gone.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review brought to you from the Toronto Film Festival. Now, you see the setup here is a little different this time, and that's because I'm finally back from Film Festival. But again, we saw so many films, sometimes you just gotta finish the rest of them when you get back. And this is one of the last films I saw of the Film Festival, and this one is the 5th installment of what started out as an iffy horror series and has progressively changed and adapted, especially off the last one, which was VHS 94, which I reviewed and thought it was really a solid entry. And here we get VHS 99, and here is the quick synopsis. Witness a hellish vision of 1999 as social isolation, analog technology, and disturbing home videos fuse into a nightmarish of found footage savagery. Now, by this point, you should know exactly what you're going to get out of this. It's always short stories of it to complete a vision of what the time frame is of the film. VHS 94 was really good in the way it executed. VHS 99 feels like the biggest risk this series has taken because it kind of, to me, stepped away from the horror element and went into the comedic element. So, the best way to review any VHS film, especially this one, is to attempt to talk about each segment of the film, because this one has 5 different segments. The first segment is called The Strutting, and that's directed by Maggie Levin. And The Strutting has to do with a rock band who decides to go to a warehouse where another rock band died from a fire. And you can just imagine what happens when you do things of that nature. That's what The Strutting is based off of. The next one is Suicide Bid, and that's by Johannes Roberts, and this is about sorority girls and them hazing someone and it going too far. And the next one is called Ozzy's Dungeon. This is done by Flying Lotus. This one is very reminiscent of the 90s kids game shows, but very twisted, and something happens at the game show and there's consequences for the host of that game show because of what happens. And then we have the Gawkers, and that's directed by Tyler MacIntyre, and it's just about, well, it says in the name, Gawkers. It's here to discover someone undressing, and then they decide to be the peeping Tom of the situation. And then we have the best segment, and I can say that hands down, the best segment of VHS 99, and that's To Hell and Back. And this one is directed by Vanessa and Joseph Winter, who also did Deadstream, I want to say, and I believe that released at South by Southwest. I know I saw it. I can't remember if we put up a review of it yet. If we haven't, we're definitely going to put one out soon for Deadstream. And this is just about a bunch of witches who get together and try to summon a demon as the new year comes upon us, and has very hysterical moments that happens after that. Now again, with all of these segments, I felt that comedy took over the horror elements of it. None of this feels serious. None of it actually feels like a horror. And actually in the middle of all these segments, we get mini segments of these little army men and playing with the army men to hilarious conclusions. But again, it all leads to this being more of a comedy than a horror film, which I think that's the biggest departure for this VHS series. I think VHS 94 started to go down that path, but still has some very, very good horror elements in it. Here, I don't feel any horror elements in it. I felt this was a straight comedy with maybe gory moments, but still nonetheless a comedy. Out the 5 segments, only Strutting is really good. Suicide Bid, you kind of wish it was longer from what you get. Kind of even with the Strutting, you kind of wished it was longer. Like you get to the conclusion with both of those elements, so both of those segments so fast, and it kind of wants you wanting more, in an extent where we could have possibly skipped Gawkers and Ozzy's Dungeon. I am not a fan of either one of them two. Matter of fact, those two to me brought down the entertainment value of this film, and it could have been better if you would have gotten rid of those two segments and just gave us 30 minutes of every segment that worked. Like, if we got 30 minutes of the shredding, 30 minutes of Suicide Bed, and then 30 minutes of To Hell and Back, I think you could have got a great version of VHS 99, along with the little army men thing sprinkled in between. I think it could have really worked. But those two middle segments, for me, are so bad that it threw me off for the rest of the film. I lost interest, and unfortunately, these two segments are right in the middle. So then you do get shredding, and then you get Suicide Bed. So we kind of get something that feels like it's building to something. And then the moment we get to Ozzy's Dungeon, it's almost like the film goes downhill. And by the time we get to the best segment, which is To Hell and Back, you're kind of a little drained with what this series is bringing you, what this movie is bringing you. But if you stick around and you still reopen your eyes to the film again at this point, and you get to see To Hell and Back, then you become intrigued. Granted, at this point, you know it's a full comedy, and you know you're not getting the basis of a horror that you would have thought you would have gotten from a VHS film. But it still works on that level, but it's just not it's not as well executed, and it's because of those two middle segments. But I don't want to harp on it to make it think like that's going to make the movie horrible. It really hamstrings the movie, but again, those three other ones are really good. The first two just need to be longer. If Shredding and Suicide Bed was longer, and maybe Ozzy's Dungeon was shorter, because that's a long segment, and so is Gawkers, and neither one of them feel necessary to be as long as they are, and it drags everything down. But again, if you stick for those three segments that I mentioned, I think you'll really enjoy it. Again, this is a VHS film, and by this point, we're at the fifth point of it. You kind of know what you're going to get here. Granted, they did throw up a little curveball, and then in the mix with all these things is the fear of Y2K is kind of running around it. If you were alive like I was around the time period when Y2K hit, when we thought the world was going to end, some of those elements are in here, but you kind of wish they would have leaned into that a little more and gave us more stories about that. Instead, we get the found footage aspects of it. Those 2 minute segments are really bad. That's the best way. I can't put it in any other way. I really disliked them so much, and it came so close to making this almost unwatchable. But then I thought, hey, if you watch it at home, whenever this debuts, maybe you skip past those segments, or maybe you may enjoy them. I just didn't personally enjoy them at all and thought they were pointless. But VHS 99, again, brought to you from the Toronto Film Festival. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give VHS 99 a 5.5 out of 10. Without those two segments I mentioned, this is an 8 out of 10 movie. Could be higher if you extended those segments out to even the conclusions we get from each segment is good. But if you'd extended those three segments out, I think it's an 8.5 out of 10 type of film. But those two segments in the middle just drag this so far down. And the weird part is, they're not horror segments, those two, which is Ozzy's Dungeon and Gawkers. But it's a weird form of attempting to be comedic and not being funny at all. It is a gut punch to watch. But the point that we got to see a VHS film at the Toronto Film Festival was more than enough for me as a fan of the series. This is just a weaker, this feels like a backtrack from VHS 94, which I thought really brought the series back into focus. This is a step back from that focus of VHS 94, but not nearly the step back of like VHS 2. So it's not that far, or not that bad of a step back, but it is a step back from VHS 94. But stick around for those three segments I mentioned, which is, again, the Shredding, Suicide Bed, and To Hell and Back. And I think just off of those, if you're a fan of this series, you will really enjoy those segments of it. And again, you can breeze through them over too. It's not that good. This has been another JVS movie review from the Toronto Film Festival. Peace, people.